Greetings, book lovers everywhere. I'm E-Train, and welcome back to E-Train Talks. And today, I am thrilled to share that I'm talking to the very talented and award-winning author of her touching and at times heart-wrenching debut novel, Jordie and Joey Fell from the Sky. I'm talking to the one and only Judi Lauren. Woo! Judi, I am so glad you're able to join me today on E-Train Talks. I've been looking forward to talking with you about your very unique and just amazing novel for so long. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And for those who aren't yet aware, Judi's novel, Jordie and Joey Fell from the Sky, has recently been awarded the Moonbeam Children's Book Award for Best First Book. And it is incredibly deserved. And congratulations, Judi.
Thank you.
Your book is just so compelling and kept me engrossed throughout the entirety of it. So, if you're not already convinced this is your next read, everybody, just wait until you hear our chat. And on that note, I'm so excited to start our interview. Here is the first question. So first, I read that you started reading at a very young age. Did you know from a young age that you wanted to be a writer as well? And for a first book, your debut novel, Jordie and Joey Fell from the Sky, touched on some very important and meaningful topics like foster care. The two main protagonists, Jordie and Joey, have both been in foster care their entire lives. So why did you choose to add the key detail that the twins were foster kids?
So, back to the first part of the question, I began reading at a really young age because my mother was a huge reader, and so she sort of installed that, love of reading into me.
Yeah.
But I did not know I wanted to be a writer until I was much, much older. I wrote when I was like a teenager, but never like seriously, just for fun. But as for the foster parent question, I am not a foster parent, but it is something that I have looked into for when I become a little bit older, because it just breaks my heart to think about, all those kids out there that don't have a home and just, but so it's something that I am hoping to do a little later in life. The reason why I have fostering in Jordie and Joey is because with how they were found, in the field with the marks and everything, it didn't make sense for them to be with a birth family or parent, because they were searching for, the place where they truly belong. So they needed to have been moved in and out several times for Jordie to have that feeling like he doesn't fit in anywhere on Earth.
I love that key detail, and that makes a lot of sense. Because to find the place where you belong, you have to not belong somewhere. And
exactly.
I think that you brilliantly added that Jordie and Joey were foster kids, and it was really important that you did as well, because not only is it an important topic, but it also felt needed. And I can't imagine Jordie and Joey any other way.
Thank you.
And I also really appreciate the bond that Jordie and Joey share. The brothers are just truly there for each other through thick and thin. And I've not read too many middle grade stories with twin protagonists, or even siblings with such a tight bond. Did you write this from personal experience, or was this purely heartfelt imagination?
So I do not have a twin, but I do have 3 sisters, and we're very close. And I've actually had friends tell me that they wish they were closer to their siblings like I am with mine. So yeah, I really could not imagine living a life without a sibling. I always feel sorry for kids that don't have them, because there's a bond between siblings, well, good siblings, because there are people out there who are just horrible siblings. But when you have a good sibling, that bond there is just it's nothing you can, copy. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun to put that in with Jordie and Joey.
And while researching some facts about you, I stumbled upon your Writer Wednesday interviews, where you interviewed writers on Wednesday. So why did you decide to start creating these blog interviews? And did these chats help improve your writing and lead you to where you are today at all?
So I was already writing, actually. I think I was already with my first agent when I started those. But I started them because there were a lot of writers that I would talk to that and they were like starting out, and they kind of wanted to know from other writers, like, what to expect and what their journey was like. And so I kind of started interviewing writers who had either like were already agented, already published, to sort of give an idea to, newer writers, like what kind of changes they can expect, and also how much things differ between writers and agents, because everyone is, they don't always operate the same way.
Also, on the topic of you and your journey, I also noticed that you became an assistant editor at Entangled Publishing. I love that name. And are now an editor at Radish Fiction. So how has your journey as an editor helped your writing, if it has at all? And did you start editing before you started writing books for kids?
So definitely started editing before I was writing books for kids. I was always very good with anything to do with, grammar, comma placement, that kind of thing. So I started editing when I was in my late teens, and I've been working that job ever since. But editing other people's writing, it definitely helps you edit on your own, because you cannot always, well, like 100% of the time, you can't see because you get very close to your own writing. Mm-hmm. So being able to edit for someone else and seeing, an issue in someone else's book, and you're like, oh, I know how to fix this, and you tell them how to fix it, and then you're like, I could have used that on my own. So it's definitely, because when you're editing for someone else, you can step back, and it's not personal at all when you're editing for someone else. So I would recommend an internship in publishing for lots of writers, because it shows you just how much easier it is when you step back and look at it as a business versus something that's like, mm-hmm. the love of your life, which is hard, because when you're writing, that's your thing, and mm-hmm. you love it. So
yeah, and I do think I can definitely see how being an editor helps you with your writing, because like sometimes my parents come and like look at my writing and say that's wrong, but like the writing feels kind of personal. So
exactly,
like, that's not wrong, I did it perfectly. But you also have to know that nobody's perfect, and the best you can do is try to be perfect. And I definitely think that being an editor would not only help you with your writing, but also it just sounds like a fun job, because giving people I don't like criticizing people, but constructive criticism, that's a different story.
It is, and especially when I mentored in contests like Pitch Wars, oh, I loved that, because they became like friends, and then I would, hear when they got agents and hear when they got book deals, and I don't know, I really like it. It's a very rewarding job.
It does sound very rewarding, and I've got to say, you just wrote such a deeply moving and wonderfully heartfelt, heartwarming story. But it was also extremely entertaining. And
thank you.
Now on the topic of books and your books, I'm really curious to know, do you have any other book projects in the works?
I have several book projects in the works.
Ooh.
I have but they're on submission currently. I have a middle grade, a couple of like young adult novels for teenagers, but nothing actually that I can like say,
Yeah.
But I do have them, and I am working on them. But hopefully Jordie and Joey is the first of many.
What inspired you who inspired you to join the book community? Was there like a parent, author, teacher, friend, or role model who kind of got you like, oh, I'm going to do this?
So my mother is a writer as well. But again, I never really took it like as something I would want to do until I was in college. And I was majoring in criminal justice. I absolutely hate it, by the way. I walked out of the first class. But so I was kind of wandering around without a major, and my English teacher said, I don't know what you're doing in criminal justice, you should be a writer. And I was like, oh, they don't make money. And he said, yes, they do, be a writer. So that's basically how that happened. So I have my English professor to thank for that.
I'm asking all the people I interview, what is your favorite spooky middle grade read?
So I'm really excited about this, because my favorite spooky middle grade read is one of my favorite middle grade reads of all time. It's
Ooh.
Nightmares by Jason Segel and Kristen. Oh, I can't remember her last name, but it's older. But I read it and fell in love with it. And it's about this boy who moves to his haunted, he thinks it's haunted house, um, with a new stepmother after his mother has passed away. And he discovers that the house is like linked to this different world where all the nightmares can come into the human world. So it's not only like fun and spooky, it's also like it's one of the best details for grief that I've ever seen in a middle grade, because he comes to terms with having lost his mother and having the new stepmother in his life. So it was just I love that book. It was a trilogy, but the first one's my favorite.
If you were abducted by aliens, what would your first move be? Escape? Kind of get to know the aliens? Or do you have another idea?
No, I would get out of there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So get out of there.
That makes sense.
I'm not a huge fan of the unknown. I love the idea of aliens. I love Roswell, I love Area 51. But me personally being there, I would not like it.
And now, it's time for the final question of the interview. I know it flew by so fast.
It did.
And if you could be or meet any literary character, fictional or real, who would it be and why?
That sounds really hard because I read so much and I love so many characters. But I'd have to probably say Percy Jackson.
Yes. Woo!
I love Percy. I'm going to age myself here, but I was in middle school when the very first Percy Jackson book came out. So
that makes you seem young.
It makes me
not
feel
old.
I was 13 when it came out. And so I grew up with Percy. So every book that came out, because I'm pretty sure they came out like every year, and I was the same age as Percy in the book, and so it felt like I just grew up with him, and I love his bravery and courage, and he's just so funny, and I don't know, I love Percy. I love the whole Percy world. I have read every Percy Jackson book there is, including like the Apollo ones, and he's my definite favorite. That world would be so cool to visit.
I feel like if Percy Jackson didn't exist, the kind of genre known as middle grade wouldn't really exist as well.
It would definitely be very, very different.
Because like Harry Potter kind of showed everybody that middle grade is amazing, but then like without Percy Jackson, like that huge series with now all the TV shows and stuff, like I just feel like it would just drastically change their world.
Yes, it would.
Because Percy Jackson also added like a lot of relatability, because like I can't relate going to Hogwarts, but I can relate to being trying to be like the class clown, or I guess the demigod clown, like Percy Jackson, and like all these characters are so relatable, and so many people like are like, that's me, like whether they're Annabeth or Nico or Will or Percy, or there are a lot of characters, I can't name them all.
There are so many.
Yes. And I've got to say, everybody, you need to read Jordie and Joey Fell from the Sky. I've said it's heartfelt, but it's also super entertaining. And if you love aliens, or if you're deadly creeped out by aliens, I think you might like this book too, if you're kind of creeped out, because you're gonna grow to love aliens. Wait, no, okay, no spoilers. That was our final question for today. Thank you so much for sharing such thoughtful answers to my questions, Judi. I've just so enjoyed our book chat, and I'm sure those listening also enjoyed learning about your writing journey and your book.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. I was really excited about this. It's my first podcast ever. Ooh. So I'm very glad that you were the first podcast I got to do.
Well, I'm really glad that you could come here and that I was your first podcast interview. Remember that, everybody. When Judi Lauren is famous, I was the first podcast interview. And yeah, it's always so great to hear what's happening behind the scenes in the writing process. And I hope I'll get to talk to you again soon on Eat Train Talks for a second take, because on the new series I'll be starting for authors to come back and share more and talk about their new books. is called, I guess, Second Take, although I don't have like an official name. But I hope everyone listening will continue to follow Judi Lauren's writing journey. You can find her on Twitter, on Instagram, and you can also find her on her website, judilauren.com. That's where you can find her Writer Wednesday interviews and her book in general. That's all for today, everyone. Take care, keep reading, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.